Fix Babinette's comrades, we're back. We're with the Chief Guard of the Republic radio show every Saturday, noon until 1. And I checked the schedule. The White Sox won't be playing till 1:10. So I don't think we'll be superseded by them. That's great because I'd love to have the lead in for the White Sox game. What do you think, Paul?
That'd be awesome.
Yeah, we could boost our listenership a bit. So you can contact us on the call-in at 847-931-1410, or you could text us at 505-926-1410. As always, you can find all these numbers on WRMN1410.com. Chat with us on the YouTube station, youtube.com/@WRMN Radio. And you can always catch our archived shows at youtube.com/Chief Guard of the Republic. That's our YouTube channel for me and Paul. All right, so first of all, I want to give a big call out here for my buddies at Dunkin' Donuts Veterans. I see them every Tuesday, and I tell them, hey, call in. There's 100 of them there. I'm like, call in. And a couple guys wrote down the number, so hopefully they remember to call in. They meet every Tuesday at 7039 West Dempster in Niles, Illinois at the Dunkin' Donuts. Every Tuesday, they're usually there between like 7:30, but the meeting doesn't start until 9. Veterans are welcome. People with anything that wants to talk to veterans, they're welcome also. Hope to see you there. And before I forget, of course, I went to Blue Box Cafe, got my coffee and my sandwich this morning. Nice people. They don't pay me a cent to do this. That's how good the sandwiches are. They don't have to pay me. And this Friday, I know our guys at the that do the wrestling show 6 to 7 p.m., they're probably going to mention it, maybe. All right. But Magoo's Bar and Grill, 6550 South Menard, down in Bedford Park. The Ultimate Combat Gauntlet Wrestling Show. Veteran-owned and veteran participation, and all veterans and first responders get a 50% discount. That's $10, only $10. $20 for everyone else. It's child friendly. Bring the kids. It's only $10 for kids. It's a good time. All right, Paul, what's our subject for this week?
Our subject for this week is kind of cool. It's about military and space programs, which we spent a lot of money on that really didn't go into fruition, but they have a lot of impact on what happened later on in both our military and space programs.
Yeah. Okay. So what's your favorite?
The first one I'd like to talk about has an actual Chicago, Illinois connection to it too. It was called the Manned Orbiting Laboratory, or MAL, and it's kind of unique because this was a classified program that wasn't declassified until 2015. But there's a really excellent PBS documentary on it called Astro Spies that was actually aired in February of 2008, and it was aired before the declassification. So the premise of this is they were going through one of the bunkers at Cape Canaveral or Cape Kennedy, whatever, and they found a blue spacesuit with the name Lawyer, Lawyer, on it. And everybody was going, lawyer in space, what's this about? So it turned out that right around the time of that's the Astro Spies right there. And it turned out that right around the time that we were transitioning from the Mercury to the Gemini program, the Air Force had an idea to use a Gemini capsule and an extended fuselage of a Titan rocket with 2 boosters on it and have a spaceship that would orbit for about 30 days. And and it was interesting because it was proposed really early on in the 60s, and there was actually testing done. They actually flew a mock-up on it, but it was supposed to fly and go into orbit in 72, and we all know we were already on the moon for 3 years by then, so they canceled it in June of 69, right before we landed on the moon. And what's unique about it, it was a 2-man Gemini capsule that they were going to cut a hole in the back of it and they would go into this lab, and it was going to map, places in the Soviet Union and China. Now, they picked the astronauts in 3 groups, and this is what's really unique about it. The first group was Michael J. Adams, Albert H. Cruz, John Finley, Richard E. Lawyer, the name on the spacesuit, Lachlan McLeely, Francis Newbeck, James Taylor, and Richard Truly. Now, some of these people went on to command shuttles, right, or part of the shuttle program. The second group was Robert Crippen, Robert Overmyer, Carol Bobko, C. Gordon Fullerton, and Henry Hartsfield, another astronaut that I know for sure was on the shuttle. And the third group is the most interesting of them all, because that's the one that has the fantastic Chicago connection. It was Robert T. Harries, Robert H. Lawrence, that's the one that has the Chicago connection, Donald H. Peterson, and James A. Abramson. Now, what a lot of people don't know is this Robert H. Lawrence was the first African-American astronaut to ever be eclipsed. And what he is famous for is he was also an instructor pilot in the F-104. So they had 2 cockpits, and he was training a guy, and the plane went sideways on the ground. And what happened was they ejected, and he ejected into the other guy, and he was killed. Now, he's from Chicago. And what's interesting is he also had a PhD in aeronautical engineering, I believe, from Purdue, I think. And it's his work that resulted in the shuttle being a very successful program. So while he passed away and never flew into space, he has one of the most interesting contributions to the United States space program with the reusable spaceship. So, I mean, that's really incredible. Now, I believe they spent, like, before they canceled the program, because they did have some launches, I believe they spent like $1.8 billion.
That's in 1970s money.
Even earlier. So that was a huge expenditure. Now, the other program, which is kind of cool, and again, that first one about Mahler, the man, there's an excellent documentary on that, which we showed. Now, the second program I like to talk about is what's called the Dynasoar, DYNASOAR, or the X-20. Now, it stands for dynamic soaring, okay? And it was kind of like an offshoot of the X-15 program. And again, they were going to use the Titan booster to launch this space plane, okay? And it got canceled fairly early on. But there's two film renderings of it. It never actually existed. It did exist in a mock-up. The film rendering is it's the safety vehicle in the Apollo era movie with the late Gene Hackman now, and I think Richard Crenna and somebody else, Marooned, where it's flown by David Jansen, and then they bring it on a helicopter, they get it ready, and then they fly it up to rescue the two remaining guys on the Apollo spaceship. And it was actually, the mock-up of it was in a Twilight Zone episode, and the episode was "And When the Sky Was Opened," and that aired on December the 11th, 1959, and it had the actors Rod Taylor and Jim Hutton in it. And the premise of that one is, and it's kind of apropos to the program, is these were guys that went into space, and came back, but it turned out they were disappearing one by one. And it turned out they didn't exist. And neither did the space plane, because you get to see the plane and then it's covered and then it doesn't exist. And that program also was canceled. And it's really kind of sad because, that was, about 20 years before the shuttle, and they were already planning on doing, programs with that.
Yeah, that was, some of that stuff was my inspiration for my book, my novel, Monkeys in Space, where they have of course they have the space cannon to launch inorganic matter up into the atmosphere, but to actually get up there with humans, a rocket-propelled engine is real expensive and dangerous, heavy and everything, and kind of a waste. So my theory was that you just take and put one of these space planes on top of a 747 or B-52, a regular jet engine that could get as high up in the atmosphere as possible, and then they launch already that high up, and they break into they break out of orbit. They break out of the Earth's gravity and get into orbit. So, and then they glide down, and they reuse these ships over and over and over. So it's not, a big waste of time. But in my theory here, like we're talking about a lot of expenditures for NASA and the Department of Defense, and I go over them. But my book has a private agency. Not so much like Elon Musk, because I don't think Elon Musk is diversified as the fictional character I created, right? But to do it efficiently in the most targeted manner, I think it takes free enterprise. I think once you give the government control of all this money, all right, they really have no skin in the game to be efficient, to get it done under budget, on time, and safety. If it blows up, we'll build another one. It only costs us a couple $2 billion. We'll have more. So when you get to these programs where they say we got a 3-year overlap, right? And we're actually on the moon, but they're also working a parallel program to be like even higher level up in orbit than the U-2, the Skunk, the U-2 spy aircraft there.
Oh, the SR-71, yeah.
Yeah. So it's like a duplicate program, and then all that money, and then they cancel the program. Now, what they should do, all right, is the way you've seen the show Forgotten Weapons, right?
Yes.
On YouTube. Great channel. That guy is goes in detail, and he gets into places and gets to see these guns. And then he goes about how the guns got developed, right? And especially U.S. military guns. And what happened was that the Springfield Armory or something comes out with they want a capability. They give a capability out there, and then all these other companies entered the contest for it. But the government isn't funding those companies to make these prototypes. They're on their own dime. All right? And so now, when they make a prototype, it's a competition and everything. And when they win, they get a huge contract. And now there's where they're making some money. All right? But when it comes to things like modern stuff like the space race, there's no real competition out there. But the government isn't allowing for competition. They're kind of being greedy about it. We're going to do it our way and our way only. And the companies like Martin Marietta, Boeing, and everything, they're like, fine, because they know they're just going to milk the government for everything they can. And if the government's telling them to do something stupid, they're going to do it in the most profitable way. They know it's stupid. They're not going to tell them. They're just going to say, hey, we can make a profit out of this stupid stuff. And it's just a waste of taxpayers' money on that. Would you agree there?
I do. And you know what I find amazing? I've been watching it and he's taken kind of like a hit in the media. But, Musk, the last couple of times, he launches these rockets and they go into orbit, okay, which we know orbit's about 18,000 miles an hour, and then to get out of orbit, it's 23,000 miles an hour. But he has enough fuel to guide these things back to the launch pad, and he's got a big clamp that catches the booster so they can use it again. You know, they're not dumping it in the ocean and letting it go to the bottom. This guy's like taking the rockets, he's going up to space with whatever, and then they're bringing the booster back. And that alone is exciting to watch it go from, you know, like 100 miles in space to come back down to the launch pad so that they could clamp it on the tower and then, you know, use it again. I mean, you know, that's ingenious, you know, and like you're saying, right, we're giving them money, they're throwing it away. And this guy's saying, well, wait, I could save on the booster and reuse it, and there's no pollution. And, you know, I mean, and you know, but, you know, that's something we should have thought about. You know, I mean, they were showing it in space movies in the 40s and 50s, but this guy's able to do it, you know?
Well, that's where I got the idea from the space gun, was from the silent movie from like 1910. You know, you see this silent movie, and they got a big cannon that launches people to the moon, you know?
That was From the Earth to the Moon. That was an excellent film.
Yeah, so the thing is, it's in Elon Musk's best interest to do it in a cost-effective way, right? Plus, he's a public personality. He doesn't have the power of the government to protect him. Maybe now he's got some friends in government, so he has to do things in the way where he looks the best, where the optics are good on him. All right, the U.S. government, I don't think they do anything where the optics are good on them. You know, and right now it's being shown that it's the optics are bad on the U.S. government, but it's got to get out there. They're bad because of all the fraud, waste, and abuse out there. All the things that we don't have to use disposable rockets. We could reuse the rockets, all right? But it comes down to who was making these boosters before, Boeing or Martin Marietta, or a combination of all that, and they put it all together. Everyone's got different parts, and they kind of jive, but they don't jive, and then they blow up on the launch pad. You know, it happens now. To get with that, with the kind of jiving and not jiving, it's interesting because I was reading something from AUSA, the Association of the U.S. Army. I never joined it. 38 years in, I never joined the Association of the U.S. Army. But they have big symposiums and weapons and everything else, and all the weapon contractors there are. And here's the thing. They are trying to sell stuff for which the military never had issued out a I just used
a request for a proposal.
Not a proposal, but we have a need. You know, the
Okay.
U.S. Army says we have a need, capability. We need this capability, right? And so what actually happens is that these massive, and Eisenhower told us to look out for them, the military-industrial complex. They are creating needs that we don't have. And no one in the government they've all been trained not to identify these capabilities and then to say we're only going to need this capability, right? So they build something that they think is whoop-de-doo, and then they try to sell it to the government. All right, so we come back. We got a call. Hey, Paul, we got a call in. Let's take the call.
All right.
Hello, welcome to the show.
Hello?
Hello.
Mike?
Yes, Riz.
All right, first of all, I want to say that you and Paul are doing a great job.
Thank you, Riz.
Thank you.
Second, I want to tell all the vets out there that Dunkin' Donuts Vets is one of the best non-organizations out there. I'm a first-time caller, all right?
Yep.
And the third thing I want to tell is about my post. Our posts are looking for members. First year dues are free, and you're welcome to join. We meet the first Wednesday of each month. We're up July and August. What else do I say, Mike?
Yep. Yeah, so Riz is the commander of what post? 1236, right?
No, 1263.
Okay, well, yeah, I'm a little bit dyslexic.
You're doing great, Mike.
Okay,
great.
so post 1263 out of Norwich, and they meet at the Sieb Center. That's right off like
Ozanam?
Irving Park Road in Ozanam. All right, so it's right.
774 West Irving Park.
Yeah, so it's the Norwich Sieb Community Center, and they meet there on Wednesdays in the afternoon, right? In the evening, 12. It's 7 o'clock, right?
7 o'clock.
7 o'clock on the first Wednesday.
And we just got 3 new members.
Nice. Very nice. And like he says, for all you veterans out there, the first year is free. So if you've been on the edge about joining the Legion or not, all right, it's not just an old man's club. We want it to be a young guys club, especially for younger members. So it doesn't cost you anything, except a little bit of time to show up at a meeting. And I know you will enjoy the meetings. He says it first year is free. All right.
Plus we have either Dunkin' Donut coffee and donuts, or we have pizza and pop.
Yeah. So food supplied. I would show up, but I got my Knights of Columbus meeting the same night, Rez.
Yeah, I belong to the Knights of Columbus too. 55 years. I'm a past Grand Knight, so we know each other real well.
Yep.
And the Knights is a great organization too.
You know, the manager of the station here, he's a Knight of Columbus.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
What
Dino.
Council? What council?
I'm not quite sure.
I'm not quite sure. It's somewhere out here in Elgin.
I'm a Father Breen, 1899. 55 years.
Yeah. What church do they meet at? What parish?
Queen of Peace.
Queen of Peace. Oh, that's the former.
It used to be Divine Savior, and they moved over to St. Eugene's.
Okay, so it's a combination of St. Eugene and Divine Savior. Okay, I know where they're at.
It's closed. Divine Savior is closed.
Yep.
Everybody went over there, or Our Lady Mother Church. But we meet at the Queen of Peace first and third Thursdays of each month.
Okay, cool. And you guys are in the Chicago Council. I'm with the council, kind of northwest suburbs.
Right. Well, the Knights do a great job. They're number one. The Vets are number 2, American Legion. And I got a number of donations, Dunkin' Donuts and a whole bunch of them, Mike, you know.
Yep. Okay, Riz, we're going to go to commercial now. Thanks a lot for your call in, Riz.
I'll see you
Thanks.
Tuesday.
We'll see you Tuesday, yes. Want to read some action-packed, exciting pulp fiction? Read the works of Michael Tuman, now featuring their international crime thriller, I Married a Bot Madam. Available on Amazon in hardcover, paperback, and Kindle editions. The paperback is also available at other book retailers. Check out Michael Tuman's webpage at Scilink.net. That's Papa, Sierra, Yankee, Lima, India, November, Kilo, dot, November, Echo, Tango.
My name is Mark Smith, and I am running for Elgin City Council. I am a proud 22-year veteran of the United States Army, former Elgin police officer, past Elgin Image Advisory Commission member, past president of the Elgin Patriotic Memorial Association, current commander of the largest local veterans organization, and a newly appointed member of the Elgin Civilian Police Review Board. If you are concerned about the direction of our city or the representation you have been receiving from your current council members, I humbly ask for your vote on April 1st. I will be your council member who asks tough questions, solves problems, protects our finances, and listens to the concerns and needs of the members of our community. My main focus will be economic growth, community development, collaborations, and transparency and accountability. The time for change is now, and I humbly ask for your support, your trust, and your partnership as together we can build a strong and vibrant future for Elgin. Please vote Smith for Elgin City Council. Paid for by Mark Smith for Elgin City Council.
Get ready for Around the House every Saturday night from 5 to 7 p.m. on WRMN AM 1410. If you're a homeowner or contractor looking to tackle those projects that feel a bit too big, this is the show for you. Join Eric along with his knowledgeable guests as they dive deep into everything from DIY renovations to creating a healthy home environment. We'll provide you with the tools and tips you need to complete your projects with confidence and ease. But it's not all work and no play. We believe in having fun. Our passion for home improvement shines through as we help you save time, money, and reduce the stress of DIY. So whether you're a seasoned pro or just starting out, don't miss Around the House. Tune in every Saturday night and let's tackle those home projects together.
You say you'd never give in to a meltdown. Never let kids' toys take over the house. And never fill your feed with kid photos. You'd never plan your life around their schedule. Never lick your thumb to clean their face. And you'd never let them leave the house looking like less than their best. You say you'd never put a pacifier in your mouth to clean it. Never let them stay up too late. And never let them run wild through the grocery store.
Peanut on aisle 6 and aisle 3.
So when you say you'd never let them get into a car without you there, no, it can happen. 1 in 4 hot car deaths happen when a kid gets into an unlocked car and can't get out. Never happens. Before you leave the car, always stop, look, lock. Brought to you by NHTSA and the Ad Council.
Join your co-hosts Mike Tuman and Paul Bervid on our weekly radio hour, Chief Guard of the Republic, where we talk about all things national security, defense, personal security, safety, and dealing with law enforcement situations. Call in 847-931-1410. Ask us questions. We will get you answers. Every week, Saturday, noon to 1 on 1410 AM WRMN Elgin. Streaming on WRMN1410.com. Chat with us on WRMN's YouTube live channel. Fixed bayonets, comrades, and we're back for the Chief Guard of the Republic radio show with Paul Bervid and Mike Tuman, your co-hosts. And we have our most loyal listener, Cleveland Dennis. Is he still there?
No, he's going to call back soon.
Okay. All right, so when he calls back. So one of the things I wanted to get to is they're saying that this, when it's kind of communist thing that they have these big dreams, they want a big dream weapon, and then they spend like mad to make this impossible weapon happen. And this was from USA, AUSA, Association of U.S. Army article that I kind of read. And I think it's kind of the reverse, because if you go back, they needed the Russians had the Soviets had capabilities back in the Cold War day. They needed capability. One of it was close air defense, all right, low level close air defense. So they took a quad 23 millimeter, which is just under an inch, but they had 23 millimeter cannons, auto cannons, and 4 of them. And normally it was just mounted on the ground, and it was point and aim. Some guy would be sitting on it. You'd see it in World War types of things in like World War II with anti-aircraft on aircraft carriers, these 4 guns shooting up. And we even had a mounted quad 50 on half tracks in World War II. Very effective. But they put it on a T-54 chassis, which was their tank between the T-34, the JS-3, and the T-64. All right, then you had the T-72. But they put it on this chassis, and they just matched it up with an off-the-shelf radar system, and the thing absolutely worked. It was everything clicked in it, all off the shelf, all what they already had. They didn't have to develop anything. They just put these three pieces together, and they maybe miraculously, but they worked. They also had when they needed they had a capability. We need to shoot down B-52s because by the time we get the warning, we got a very short time to get up to altitude to launch missiles to shoot these down. So they says, oh, we're going to need a very heavy engine on this aircraft. And they go, yeah, well, we got heavy engines. They're bomber engines. They go, okay, probably need two of those. They said, well, we should make it out of a real strong light steel, light metal. And they said, okay, but what is it? Titanium. Titanium is kind of expensive. We'll make it out of stainless steel. They already had it there, right? And they go, well, we need a very powerful new radar system that could punch through the anti-measures of the B-52 and send our missiles into it. And they go, yeah, we'll just miniaturize this thing that we had. And it was all vacuum tube technology. It was no, solid state transistors anymore. And that's called the MiG-29. And the thing was like one of the first aircraft to do Mach 2. And when they got the pilot, they said, yeah, it'll do Mach 2. It just won't stop. It just, runs out of gas to make it stop once it hits that speed. But with the ZSU-23-4, what we call the Zeus, right? Very dangerous. It was always a high priority to get these things, right? Off the shelf. So we go to something to counteract that, and they go with the Sergeant York. And you had, instead of having a bid come out and have people build the prototypes off their own dime, like Martin Marietta, like General Dynamics, like GM, like Ford, Chrysler, any of those, to build a prototype off their own dime and then prove that it works, the government funded them. So they have no skin in the game. They're making money no matter what. We're losing money. They're making money. They're making changes. When someone says, we want this added on, it costs us money, doesn't cost them a dime. They don't lose a dime. They have no skin in the game. But if you tell them you have to build a multi-million-dollar vehicle prototype and we might not buy it, if they're going to build that vehicle, it had better work. And it better be as cost-effective as possible because they have skin in the game. Because if they win the contract, then they're going to make multi-million, billions, right? But if they don't win the contract, they lose money. So what I see now is the U.S., all these guys have zero skin in the game because we're funding it all. You agree, Paul?
I do.
Yeah. There's
no incentive for them to be innovative or economical or, there's no incentive. I mean, once you're throwing money at them, it's like you're just keep feeding them. There's not, and then when the money stops, they look for a new funding source. There's nothing in it that makes them want to continue the longevity of it on their own.
See, now here, I can't blame the private sector for getting away with this. All right, for getting away with this because they're going to protect probably getting the contract. So they're going to do whatever the generals or admirals or whatever say. And that gets to be a big problem. If you watched, there was a show about the Bradley fighting vehicle, how that came into being, right? And I wish I could get the name of that show up. But what happened was they wanted one thing, which was very forward-looking with the Bradley. They said, we need a vehicle that's fast and armored to get our infantry troops to the front line rather safely. And then all of a sudden, all these generals got their little 2 cents in, and they're going to vote for it, and they have the senators and the contingent, everything, and they want, we want a gun on it. Oh, we want a turret on it. Oh, we want this, we want that. And they're adding capabilities that weren't immediately required. And if you look at the war in the Ukraine now, all of our Bradleys, all of the vehicles, Stryker vehicles, every vehicle, even on the Russian side, the BTR-80s, the BTR-60s, everything that they have is they go up maybe 1 kilometer at the most, 1 kilometer. Sometimes they're traveling like 5 kilometers under safe. It's not really too safe with the drones, with all the drones and everything. But behind their own lines, and quote safety, maybe 5 kilometers, and then 1 kilometer across some ground, some open ground. And that's all they travel. And they dump off the troops, and then they get out of there because they're a big rolling steel target. But they need to get the troops as quickly and as safely as possible to this tree line or something. And that's all. The guns are useless. I mean, they could spray the front or whatever, but they're not really trying to do that. They're getting their troops up there, dropping them off, and getting back, all right? So sometimes even with the tanks, they're just zooming up there, getting back, all right? Tanks are pretty much leading the way and clearing out minefields. They have the flails and everything else, clear out the minefield so the vehicles behind them don't get blown up. But that was very forward-looking, but then they threw everything onto this Bradley, and it slowed it down. And now it needs a bigger engine because it's heavier, and now you got to sacrifice some armor. And it was just a nightmare because everyone's adding their piece on. If you ask for a capability very specific, right, and they're able to fill that capability, it's like, all right, so you want a knife, try to put this in layman's term, you want a knife that folds and can cut things. That's it. That's all you ask for, right? And then all of a sudden, someone's saying, well, I need a can opener. Then someone's saying, I need a corkscrew. Then someone's saying, I need a fishing line thing and everything else. I need a toothpick and I need tweezers. And you get this big, giant Swiss Army knife. And I'm not saying that it's poorly made or whatever, but everything has to sacrifice for that original cutting blade. Now your blade no longer locks. Now you have a chance of cutting yourself. The blade's thinner, so it could break. But if you just had a simple folding, hunting knife, that's all you wanted. So adding this stuff on is bad. But who adds it on? The
guys down the line.
The guys on the high level. Mm-hmm. You go and you ask an infantry guy what he wants. Now go down to the private. And we used to have so I'm getting down. I know more about tactical level, right? And a lot of the tactical equipment, that modern stuff that we use, like Gore-Tex pants, Gore-Tex jackets instead of the old rain poncho and everything, or the rubberized jacket, that all came from the Special Forces. And they didn't develop it. They bought it off the shelf because they had operational funds. So when they needed special equipment, they went to your local camping, hunting store, gun store, or whatever survivalist store, and they brought this stuff off the shelf. And then they had a proof of concept, and they used it, and everyone said, oh, that's really cool. Then the government puts out for this capability, and they get a contract to make the stuff in bulk. And then sometimes the government puts out for a capability, and they test it out at some of their testing centers, whether it's going to work or not. All right, so we got Dennis. Is this Dennis?
This is Dennis.
Hey, Cleveland Dennis, how you doing?
I'm good. I'm enjoying the show. I was going to tell Matt something, but I'll save it. You can hook me up with him after we get done talking. But I appreciate what you have to say today. Started talking about the weapons again and all that, but I want to go back to the conversation you had about jibe. I just want to provide my 2 cents. The Jive 5 were a doo-wop group made by True Story, and that's when you first heard jive, J-I-V-E,
right,
into the vernacular or the lexicon of the American language. But jibe, J-I-B-E, or spelled G-I-B-E, as I texted across to the
I see your text there, your chat, yeah.
Yeah, that's like we agree. So those two terms have been kind of mixed and used, I guess, either which way. I just thought I'd mention that because you were going back and forth with it earlier.
Okay.
But, it's been tough to tune in because of some broadcast problems, but I'm out here listening, and so much of what you have to say, I dealt with all these big corporations that you mentioned, General Dynamics, and, of course, GM, Ford, and all the...
I forgot Raytheon. Raytheon.
Yeah, we dealt with all of them, and a lot of that stuff we had to move it under particular licenses if we exported it. Sometimes we were just exporting a disc in the late 90s over to the UK, and they were doing something, and then they'd send it back. Anyhow,
See,
in
now,
general, go ahead.
See, now that's what you said right there brought another thing up, back to my memory.
Right.
One of the things that kind of ticks me off, like, okay, Edison, they say he was a genius. He saw stuff, electricity, he made a few inventions, but then he made enough money that he hired a lot of thinkers to think for him. But he was also good with the contracts because anything they invented became his intellectual property. He owned it. He owned the patents and everything on it because he was funding them.
Isn't that what the Microsoft guru did too, with the computer?
Well,
yeah.
I'm not doing. He did.
Gates.
He does. Gates. Yeah. Well, Gates absolutely hires a bunch of people to work for him, and anything they do becomes Microsoft's intellectual property, so they can't sell it on the outside, and they can't patent it. And anything that they do individually out there, he's going to claim they had that idea while they were working for him. And that gets to my point here: is that when the U.S. government funds Martin Marietta, Raytheon, Douglas, all these companies, when they fund them, Boeing,
Grumman,
all right, all the big companies there, when they fund them to do this research on this weird project, they're not just coming up with the capability that the project requires. They come up with some other stuff, all right? There's some side effects of that. Well, this works. Well, this works. Now, here's the thing. Since it's not part of the capability, but it was invented under U.S. government funding, then those patents should belong, and those licenses for that should belong to the government. But the government never does that. Martin Marietta take that stuff and they'll sell it to someone else, whatever, like they own the patent. And they're not coughing up anything, even though they developed it under U.S. contracting. So it is just they have an entire dairy farm of government cows to milk. Right? And when they make cheese out of that milk, they don't give the government back any of the money for the cheese.
I love it. I dealt with Churchill Matrix or Matrix Churchill, I forget how they called themselves, out of Solon, Ohio, back in the 80s. Years later, I started reading that, they were in big trouble because one of their divisions took the property rights on something special, and out of the UK, one of their employees sold it to the Iranians, and it's like, wow. Get too close to touching that stuff. Anyhow, I did touch John Glenn's capsule when it was on display over in Cleveland at the public auditorium at some event back in the, late 60s.
Nice.
But, and when you look at the capsule, it's like about, the size of a...
Volkswagen Bug?
No, smaller. I think smaller. Yeah, that's a good comparison. Yeah, and he was all cramped up in there. At least the guys that were up for 6 months or whatever, the lady and the other gentleman astronaut that were up there, at least they could, walk around. I don't know if it was walking.
Yeah, but you know what? They've got gravity sickness because...
I'm sure. Oh, my God.
You lose bone density, you lose muscle strength, you lose the lung capacity. You lose all that stuff. Your blood even loses a lot of the ability to carry oxygen because you're not burning as many calories. So everything decreases.
Yeah, and I don't know if it was the photography, the picture, but the fellow's face looked like it was a basketball.
Yeah, she came back with a tan too, and I could just say that that's probably from hitting fresh air. And she came very flush with the blood coming to your face. Well,
it's just interesting. At least we can see it, and we get the truth, and I'm just happy they made it back.
So are we all. Yeah. You should read my book, Monkeys in Space. And this I wrote a couple years back, and it's almost the same premise as what just happened. Almost.
Really?
But you would really enjoy Monkeys in Space. It's available on Amazon.
And I probably would. I like to look at pictures. I buy rock and roll, like rockabilly magazines or books, but I don't get into too much depth because I got to read through like today, couple pages long explanation of sending $5 million jet engines over to China to get reworked and then fly them back as the actual jet engines that have customs sign them off. But anyhow, I'm enjoying your program. It seems more and more each week.
Thank you, Dennis.
Thank you.
Okay?
So, Paul,
All
if you notice the book Monkeys in Space, Paul, do you notice anything familiar about the cover?
Yeah, the monkey and then the rocket that I made during the pandemic.
Yeah, that was pretty cool. I was like, man, this be perfect for the cover. You know, because I sent my daughter to 4 years of art school. So when I ask her to do cover art, it's like, I'm too busy. So I'll do it myself. I'll learn. You know,
I used to during the lockdown. I used to make models and send them to model YouTube channels, and then they put them on.
Nice.
So I had a lot of fun doing that.
And Paul, you have your own YouTube channel, right?
I do, and I put some of my models on there and other things.
What's it called?
Cross of Gold. No, it's just called Paul Bervid 1610, I believe.
Okay, Paul Bervid 1610, the YouTube channel. What's 1610 significant for?
I don't know. They gave me that number.
Oh,
That's
okay.
what they started giving numbers to people.
Yeah, like I see someone's name, and okay, so there was some commercials on, and I'm overhearing them through was playing here, and Mark Smith sounds like a guy that we should have on our show. I don't know what his politics are. I don't care about what his politics are as long as he's civil, doesn't use curse phrases, it doesn't outright insult people. You know, that's what being civil is. And if he says he's 20 years in the military and did some law enforcement, I welcome him onto the show. He could get heard. You know, he could be a co-host here. Maybe he does a good job. He could sit in for me once if I'm going to have trouble making it. And but okay, Paul, give me another government boondoggle.
Okay, well, the other one that's interesting is in the early 1960s, the Army, of all things, wanted a jet that was vertical takeoff and landing. So they created, Lockheed built them, two of them. It was the VZ-10 or the XV-4, which was referred to as the Hummingbird. Now, they only made two of them, and they were vectored things, and they weren't fighters. They were supposed to be for reconnaissance, and they would fly just under 500 miles an hour. And there's some video out there of it. Really cool. They would hover just like a hummingbird, and it was for the Army, not the Air Force. But they both crashed. I think one of the pilots sadly died, so they abandoned that program. But then we know that the British went forward with their own, and they made the Harrier, which was quite a successful aircraft. They used it successfully during the Falklands War and in the Iraq War, and so that. And then another one that I like, and there was a movie about it. It was the Martin XB-51. And it was a 3-engine jet, and after it was canceled already, they used the plane in a movie, Toward the Unknown, which starred William Holden. And in that one, they called it the Gilbert XF-120. But it's kind of funny because, they have some excellent footage of the plane, and it kind of looked futuristic. But the program had already been canceled by the time they used it. So I guess that's why the government was so willing to let them use it. Now, the interesting thing is they only had one plane at the time to use because they had already lost the other one. So they got some use out of the developmental money that they spent. They made a movie out of it, and it kind of like was a recruiting tool for the Air Force at the time, since they had just recently split off from the Army Air Corps.
That was 1947.
Right, and the movie came out in early 50s.
Yeah, so when you talk about the Army and the Air Force, the Army has more planes, more fixed wing, including helicopters, not just including helicopters, but more fixed wing aircraft than the Air Force, and more boats than the Navy. That's just an Army. Now, do you think the British saved a lot of money by using all the research that the United States did for that vertical lift jet aircraft that failed for us?
I don't know, because there's an old episode of The Saint where they show that plane in the early 60s. I think, from what I remember, the guy kind of built it on his own in a garage, that Harrier guy, and he built it. I don't know. I think he was working on it since the late 50s or middle 50s. So I don't know, but it's kind of amazing that they were both working on it at the same time almost.
Yeah, that gets back to that thing with the wheel, right? Where was the wheel invented? Was the wheel invented in multiple places relatively at the same time?
Probably.
There's some places where the wheel was never invented. They had no concept of rolling or leverage, levers, everything, blocking tackles, simple mechanical devices. They're like, what? But yeah. So
somehow I think the wheel might have coincided somewhere where there were trees. Because if the tree was knocked down and you could cut a little piece off of it, maybe you could figure out that you could make a wheel out of it. But I don't know. That could just be me,
Could roll, yeah. Because some of the
that could just be a Flintstones episode. I'm not sure,
Yeah, well, some of the older wagons were just a big tree, like you said, a big tree, and that was carved circular out of a big piece of wood until they figured, hey, we don't need all this wood. We could use spokes. And I think that's one of the things that I said. We need to get back to a free market economy where these contractors have skin in the game, all right? We don't need to fund their foibles, their failures, all right? If they want to get a contract with the government, they better be the best at it, because if they fail, it's all going to be on their dime, and they have to explain it to their shareholders. Now they don't have to explain anything. They're like, bah. Okay, thank you.
Have a great week.
Have a great week. And remember, Magoo's Friday night down in Bedford Park. Doors open at 6 o'clock. 7 o'clock, the wrestling show starts. Half price for veterans. It's only $10, and first responders. All right, and see you next week, Saturday, noon to 1. This is the Chief Guard of the Republic radio show. Thank you for listening. Bye.
Bye.
Want to read some action-packed, exciting pulp fiction? Read the works of Michael Tuman, now featuring their international crime thriller.